Let's check the sound. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Anthony Newby from North Minneapolis. Tell us what brings you here. What stories you have to tell.
Well, I came here today because my home was near the path of the tornado, and we were spared. My family was spared. My home was spared, but the neighborhood was destroyed. In the aftermath, I'm also a new resident in North Minneapolis. In the aftermath, myself and there was all sorts of activists, volunteers, etc. in the neighborhood helping to clean up and rebuild. Myself and a small group of other people were really effective in documenting sort of the gaps that weren't met by local agencies. And so we found out that there were all sorts of people who were trapped in houses that they couldn't get out of. They were in apartment buildings where the elevator didn't work. They couldn't get to the bottom floor or up. They were in their homes without food or water. They were elderly that couldn't get food or water. And a lot of this was not covered by the local media. So myself and some other activists were very involved in sort of spreading that word to the media.
How did you document it?
A gentleman by the name of Peter Kerr, who's also a DJ and an activist who is sort of considers Minnesota a home base but lives in Harlem, heard of the tornado. He was in New York at the time and flew back, and he was the one who sort of spearheaded the initiative to connect with local media. So he was all over KARE 11 News and Fox 9 News, and we reached out to them and said, these are the things that aren't being covered. These are the stories of people who need help that aren't getting it. And so we are passionate about not sort of glossing over this issue. I live in North Minneapolis, and so we want the attention to be not sort of on a soundbite or on a one-off story. We want people to be informed about what happens once the tornado is gone, once the trees are and the debris is removed, but what happens to the long-term state of the neighborhood that's been totally devastated by a natural disaster.
So let's back up a second. For those watching and listening who aren't familiar with the Twin Cities of North Minneapolis, there are a lot of folks from out of town here for Netroots. Tell me about North Minneapolis. The beautiful things there, the problems there, the makeup. You know, what are some of the challenges daily and weekly?
Well, I can tell you the reason I ended up in North Minneapolis is as a real estate investor and somebody who's been around real estate and follows the market. There's a great opportunity to buy in a community that's very close to downtown and the economic hub of the city and of the region, and you can buy at a very low price. And so that was my initial motivation. And when I got there, I realized it's an incredibly diverse community. It's sort of the heart of the black community in Minneapolis, and there are a lot of incredible people there. It's a mix of upper middle class doctors, lawyers, and there's also a lot of poverty, tremendous unemployment rates. In fact, as progressive as Minneapolis is, there are more unemployed black men in Minneapolis than there are per capita versus almost any other major city in the country. Oh my God. And that's also true of graduation rates from public schools. So there are a lot of real wealth disparities right here in Minneapolis that folks may not be aware of. And in fact, until I moved to North Minneapolis, I was not acutely aware of how problematic the divide is between the stability of the economy in Minneapolis, which has been to a degree insulated from the larger recession, and pockets of North Minneapolis that are so far behind the curve nationally that it's really unacceptable. And this storm has really highlighted that. So, going forward, one of the things that we're sort of working on as part of this Rebuilding North Minneapolis initiative is we've come up with an idea that I've pitched to the mayor last week. I'm going to pitch to him again next week with him and the Housing Authority gentleman. And the idea is, with roughly 15,000 vacant and foreclosed properties in Minneapolis, we believe that nobody should be homeless because of a natural disaster. It's completely unacceptable that people are living in armories and shelters. There are hundreds and thousands of people in Minneapolis who are today, this moment, homeless because of a natural disaster. Meanwhile, the city has 15,000 vacant and foreclosed properties.
Any idea how many of those vacant or foreclosed homes are in North Minneapolis?
The majority. Yeah. North Minneapolis was coincidentally, ironically, it was the center of the foreclosure crisis because it was a minority community, and because we now know that predatory lending by banks during the mortgage crisis was a very real thing. When the economy turned and the housing bubble started to collapse, it affected those communities more than any other, and North Minneapolis in particular was the hardest hit. And so we think it's timely, we think it's appropriate, and we think it's a logical solution that those banks who currently, we're asking in particular banks who were bailed out with TARP money to dedicate a small portion of their inventory for those folks who are homeless because of natural disasters to live temporarily. We've constructed a pretty detailed plan that would say on a 6-month basis that folks should be able to rebuild their lives in these properties, particularly with banks who hold properties that are vacant, boarded, and presumably livable. And if they're not livable, many of them can become livable very easily with a very minimal investment from even local property management companies, of which there are many in North Minneapolis. Folks looking for work, in other words, and these banks are already securing the property and boarding them so that they can't be entered and vandalized. What we're going to ask and what we're going to work with the mayor to do is ask these banks again to set aside a small portion of their inventory so that if there is a flood, if there is a tornado, if there is any sort of natural disaster, that's the least appropriate reason for folks to be homeless in our estimation.
So we're not talking, this is not the idea that it's a housing crisis is a complete misnomer. This is an equity crisis. So appealing to banks to perhaps grant 6-month extensions or 6-month moratoriums on foreclosing homes or letting folks who don't have homes use these homes for 6 months. Where does the mayor come in? I mean, what can he and politicians do? Because, of course, banks are private sector.
Well, that's exactly the point. I think our position is we didn't want to lobby banks directly. We felt it was inappropriate for us to make a phone call and ask Wells Fargo, would you let folks who are homeless and living in an armory live in a portion of your inventory? We didn't think that would be very effective. I mean, we'll also pursue those means, but the most effective way will be not, this goal is not to force banks to do anything. We don't want to frame it in that way. The goal here is to inform banks with the help of our local political leadership that it's actually in their best interest. There is a lot of negative PR and there's a public sentiment that banks just simply were given a check by the government and have done nothing to reinvest in America. And this is a way for the banks to challenge that perception by attacking a particular problem in a very specific way. They can do this all over the country, by the way. This isn't something that has to be focused specifically to North Minneapolis. And it's a way for banks to give back. If there's a pushback and if there's resistance, that's where our local politicians, I think, are helpful, because for them, it should be sort of a no-brainer. We have people who need immediate housing. It's not a political issue. It's not a partisan issue. It's an issue of people who are left homeless because of a natural disaster that's outside of any of our control. And it can happen anywhere. It can happen in North Minneapolis. It happens in Missouri. It happens in hurricane season in Miami. And that's why we feel that this particular issue has a chance to bring Minnesota back to a position of national prominence on progressive issues. And we've slid back. I'm a Minnesota native. And so I know in my mind what Minnesota means, and it's the Minnesota of Hubert Humphrey and Arnie Carlson and progressive folks who believe that that equality that we've become comfortable with maybe in the last 10 or 15 years is not the norm.
Anthony, is there a website or online resources where people can go to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, we've got a presence on Facebook. We're in the process of forming an organization that's going to be a more cohesive voice for some of the activists that we're working with. There are 3 or 4 of us that are very like-minded, are very attached to the idea of North Minneapolis and rebuilding, and very attached to the idea of progressive politics and working with our leadership or electing our own leaders who will fulfill some of these agendas, and in particular this foreclosure disaster relief plan. So the short answer is no, but in the coming weeks there will be.
What's the Facebook name?
Minneapolis tornado.info.
So Facebook.com, MinneapolisTornado.info.
And we want to give all credit to Peter Kerr, also known as DJ Expect. He's a promoter. He's an activist, and he's the one who really started and initiated this website. But again, what we're trying to do is get a collective of people, and that's why I came to Netroots. We realize that the network is the most important way to affect political change, and so we want to work with a group of folks, not for the furtherment of any particular person or ego or agenda, but we want to start with this issue and get people who are homeless today into housing that is available today, and we think there's a logical way to do that.
Anthony, man, thanks so much for appearing, speaking with us, and yeah, I mean, we're launching a Sustaining Solutions, or we have a Sustaining Solutions series that's in the works, and we're going to be focusing on North Minneapolis, on innovative, creative solution makers in North Minnie. Chuck Olson and I on the team, we'd like to, if you're around next week, we'd like to come up and perhaps spend some time with you and others, and DJ, and I want to hit the ground running, do some interviews, and get comfortable with the locals. I mean, I want people to be comfortable with us with video cameras there, because we want to tell their stories, but not in an intrusive way.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're right to do that, because there's been plenty of people that are, people driving through the neighborhood taking photos and sort of,
that's not the idea.
Right.
We don't want to objectify, but we want to, as a media organization, as a progressive media organization, shine a light where we can help.
We need it, we appreciate it, and we'll help you in any way we can.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for your time. Terrific, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah. I think we're going to switch over.
Good.
I want to make sure that one of us has your info, phone number, email, whatever.
Good.
Because we're going to... Are you around early next week?
I am.
Let me give you my card. Once this ends and once we all catch up on sleep, I want to come up there and get to know the lay of the land and talk with you and others.
There's nobody better than with our network. We have people who've been in North Minneapolis for 80, 100 years. So from the beginning, so we know, all the activists, all the business leaders.
Great.
Yeah, let's continue the conversation.
Let's do it. I'm thinking Monday. I mean, Monday I want to get up there. We want to switch from Netroots over to North Minneapolis in terms of our focus.
Good. I'll leave my contact info and we'll hit it out.
Yeah, give it to Serene if you would. That'd be great.
Thanks again. Really.
Thank you.
Do we have another interview right away?
Yeah, we do. Hi, I'm Jakob.
Kylie.
Thanks. You're busy.
I am busy. I'm still trying to do my day job. But
Are you having fun?
Yes, I'm exhausted, but yes.
Well, thanks for agreeing to speak.
Yeah, sure.
No,
I didn't have a choice. Mark just said they want to interview.
It's Dan Pfeiffer, right? Dan is the first name?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it was profound. It was very powerful.
Oh, good.
Almost uncomfortable in a way, but I think that's the idea.
Well, they told me they don't want it to be a softball kind of thing.
I know.
Before he starts you up, I gotta go do that. In half an hour, you're interviewing Raw Goddess, who is one of the performers who is up on stage.
They're coming here?
She's coming here.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, we don't gain anything from softballs.
No. And they've got the White House press corps for that, so it's not like we're going to lose our access. We don't have any.
Right. I know. Did we get a card so we can enter in your name in the lower thirds? So that this will be airing live, and then also we'll send the video over to you guys. Sweet. Oh, is your last name? Oh, Joy Gray. Okay.
Kylie Joy Gray?
Kylie Joy Gray. That's a cool name.
Thank you. Thank my parents.
I will. They're coming by. We'll interview them.
Believe me, my mom would love
Serene?
to be in front of the camera.
This is for Kylie's lower third.
Thank you. I already got it.
Okay. Are you?
I want to be able to email.
Let me know when we're ready. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
No.
No, we're not ready.
Why aren't we ready?